Welcome back to the Unlock Your Potential podcast. I'm Matt Faupel, founder of Faupel X, and this is where we get real about commercial real estate, leadership, and execution. This show is about systems, strategy, and real stories that help you scale smarter and lead when the pressure's on. No fluff, no theory, just what actually works in the field. Today we're talking about something every property manager knows way too well: severe weather. Tornadoes, thunderstorms, flash floods, winter blizzards, you name it. If you're managing properties in anywhere in the world, you know exactly the next weather event is always coming. And here's the hard truth. The way you handle these events doesn't just affect your properties, it defines your reputation as a property manager. Your tenants, your ownership groups, even your team, they're all watching how you respond when things go sideways. This episode is about moving from crisis to control with clear steps you can actually use when the storm passes and when it's time to get to work. All right, let's start with the most important thing first. This is where I see good managers make dangerous mistakes. When the skies finally clear and you can see the damage, your instinct is going to be just to rush in, start assessing everything. And I need you to stop right there. The first move is always safety. Always safety is the first move. You need to make sure the threat is actually over. Multiple storm waves, tornado outbreaks, they can happen in a single situation. I've seen managers get caught outside during a second wave of a storm because they assumed that it was done and had passed. Check for injuries among your staff, tenants, vendors who might be on site. Know your first aid basics and never hesitate to call 911 when you need to. Before you even think about going into a situation, scan the area from a safe distance. Be aware of down power lines, gas leaks, structural cracks. Any of these are absolute deal breakers before you go investigating that area. And never ever step into standing water or try to flip a breaker in a flooded area. Electrocution is a real risk and is something that you need to be very careful with. In winter storms, you might be dealing with ice, heavy snow loads on a roof, slip and fall hazards everywhere. You don't earn respect by being the first one inside of a damaged building or in a dangerous situation. You earn it by keeping people safe. Once you've confirmed the site is safe, now you can shift into assessment mode. And this isn't about walking around with a clipboard and looking busy. This is a systematic documentation that's going to drive your repairs and your insurance claims. Roofing, siding, glass, signage, light poles, trees. Look for obvious damage, but also look for the things that might fail later. Water intrusion, broken systems, structural shifts, settling. Don't forget your building systems, HVAC units on the roof, boilers in the basement, fire panels, elevators. These systems can look fine, but have hidden damages that show up later after the event. And I cannot stress enough, document everything. Photos, videos, written notes with timestamps. This is extremely important, and I'll tell you why this matters. For example, property that had looked like minor hail damage on their roof, the building manager took maybe a couple dozen photos, figured it wasn't that bad. 6 months later, that property manager noticed they were getting interior leaks all over their top floor. And it turns out the hail had caused micro fractures in the roof membrane. Those weren't visible right away after that storm. When the property manager went to file an insurance claim, the adjuster wanted detailed documentation from right after the storm. Those dozen photos weren't nearly enough. What should have been a straightforward claim turned into a months-long battle that ended up costing way more than if the damage would have been fixed from the beginning. In these moments, you're not just a property manager, you're a historian of the event. You need to document things like the claim depends on it, because it literally does. This is where things often get messy, but it's also where strong leadership really matters. If you have immediate hazards, gas leaks, down power lines, trapped tenants in an elevator, you need to engage emergency services immediately. Don't try to be the hero. Follow whatever guidance local authorities give you, building inspections, curfews, evacuation orders. You need to follow those in addition to your owner and property rules. Follow that emergency action plan to the T. Start your claims process as early as you can, even while you're figuring out the scope of damage. The earlier you start the process, the better. When the adjuster shows up, work with them. Provide them all the documentation, walk them through everything, and stay proactive throughout the entire process. This is something very critical to keep in mind. You need to be careful about the storm chaser contractors, fake insurance representatives, people trying to take advantage, be a vulture after a disaster. Here's an example. There was a situation where a roof contractor showed up the day after a severe hailstorm, claiming they were in the area and they're already working with insurance companies. The person had official looking paperwork, the whole deal, but something felt off to that property manager. It turns out that guy was running a scam, taking deposits and disappearing. There was a property in the area that fell for it and they lost $15,000. Chaos attracts opportunists. Your job as a leader is to filter out the noise and keep the process clean and professional. Your tenants don't just want updates, they want certainty, even when you can't give them all the answers. First thing is to account for everyone's safety. Confirm that every tenant, all of their staff members, they are safe. And this isn't just good management, it's basic human decency. Provide status updates quickly, even if you don't have complete information. The building is closed until further notice. The power is out. We're working with the utility company. The north wing is off limits, pending an inspection. Give them what you know when you know it. Use multiple communication channels, mass emails, text alerts, tenant portals, and if the power's out, go old school with printed notices or written notices for that matter. Don't assume everyone gets their information the same way. Set clear expectations about what you know, what's happening next, and when they'll hear from you again. Even if your update is, we're still assessing and we will provide another update at 3 o'clock. That is better than radio silence. Here's an example. A flood situation where a property team had to evacuate a building for several days. They sent updates twice a day to the tenants every day, even when there wasn't much new to report. Months later, during the lease renewal, a tenant specifically mentioned that they stayed because the property management team had kept them in the loop during that emergency. They said other properties in the area they had heard were that the property team was radio silent and it made them feel abandoned. In emergency situations, communication isn't just a task you check off your list. It's a lifeline for your tenants, for all of your stakeholder relationships. After safety and communication comes stabilization. This is where you start turning the corner from crisis back to control. Secure the building first. Tarp damaged roofs, board up broken windows, hire temporary security if you need it. The goal is to prevent additional damage while you're working on permanent fixes. Remove debris safely. Don't try to do everything yourself with your own team. Know when to call in professionals that have the right equipment. Prioritize your critical systems, electricity, water, HVAC, structural integrity. Get these things stabilized, then work on the cosmetic stuff. Engage contractors you trust, the ones you already have relationships with, not the ones knocking on your door the day after the storm. Keep coordinating with your insurance throughout the entire process. Save every receipt, track every step, document every decision. This isn't just good practice, this is protecting the claim that you started. Recovery is always a process, but the faster you can stabilize the situation, the sooner your tenants can get back to business. And getting your tenants back to business is ultimately what this is all about. Every storm teaches you something, and smart operators use lessons to get better. Conduct after-action reviews with your team. What went well? What could have gone better? What gaps did you discover in your emergency action plan? Address the obvious physical issues. Trim trees that pose risks. Clear drainage systems. Reinforce weak spots that you discover during a walkthrough. When you're doing repairs, renovations, upgrade with resiliency in mind. Wind-rated roofing, backup power systems, impact-resistant glass. These aren't just nice to have, these are proactive items that will prepare you for the future. Review your insurance coverage often and make sure any gaps that you discover are filled before the next situation happens. Here's an example. There was a storm, an ice storm, that knocked out power for several days. The emergency action plan for that property assumed power would be back within 24 hours, so they did not have any adequate backup systems or procedures for this type of situation. After that storm, though, they completely rewrote their emergency protocols and installed backup systems that could handle extended outages. And what do you know? A couple years later, there was a major power outage, but that time they were ready. The tenants barely felt the situation because the property team had learned from the previous experience. Severe weather is unavoidable. If you're managing properties, you will experience severe weather. But repeating the same mistakes over and over, that is a choice. Here's what I want you to remember. Severe weather is completely out of our control, but your preparation, your response, your leadership, those are absolutely within your control. When tenants and ownership groups look back after a storm passes, they're going to remember one thing. Did you lead with clarity and competence, or did you add to the chaos they were experiencing? That's a wrap on today's episode of Unlock Your Potential podcast. If this episode gave you a solid framework for handling your next emergency, please share it with someone in commercial real estate that could use it. Please take time to check out faupelx.com. It's a great place to get connected. Links to CRE Pro, our ChatGPT app, and also our Unlock Your Potential newsletter on LinkedIn are there as well. Until next time, keep pushing forward.